Hello and welcome to The Inner Path, Beyond the I Am. What you're about to hear is not a script or a concept. It is part of a real conversation that took place during my spiritual journey. This dialogue came out of my own seeking, and it reflects my attempt to go deeper into the silence taught by Sri Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta Maharaj. These are questions I ask sincerely, not just for understanding, but to uncover the silence within. I'm sharing it now in the hope that it may be of use to you on your own path. If it touches something true in you, sit with it, not as information but as living inquiry. Seeker, Ramana said, when the observer himself becomes the screen, only the self remains. Please explain. Master, certainly. The teaching you have quoted from Sri Ramana Maharshi. When the observer himself becomes the screen, only the self remains, carries profound spiritual significance. It points directly to the essence of his teachings on self-enquiry and the nature of the self. To understand this, let us unpack it step by step. 1. The observer. The observer in this statement refers to the ego or the sense of individuality that perceives the world. It is the one who thinks, feels, and identifies itself as separate. The I that experiences duality, distinguishing between itself and the world. This observer sees objects, thoughts, and experiences as external to itself. In Sri Ramana's teachings, this observer is not the true self. Instead, it is a temporary, conditioned identity that arises in the mind, often referred to as the I thought. The observer believes itself to be distinct from the observed world. 2. The screen. The screen represents the substratum of existence, the unchanging and eternal reality upon which all appearances, objects, thoughts, experiences, the world, are projected. The screen is the self, pure consciousness. It is like the white screen in a cinema, which remains unaffected whether the film being projected on it is joyful or tragic. Sri Ramana often explained that the self is the silent, still presence that underlies all appearances. It is not involved in the play of thoughts or experiences, but serves as their unmoving support. 3. The observer becomes the screen. When Sri Ramana says, the observer himself becomes the screen, he is pointing to a radical shift in perception that occurs in the process of self-inquiry. In self-inquiry, one investigates the nature of the I, or the observer, by persistently questioning, who am I? The mind turns inward and traces the observer back to its source. As this inquiry deepens, the distinction between the observer, the ego, and the screen, the self, dissolves. The ego, which appeared to be a separate entity, is realized to be nothing but an illusion. The observer merges into the screen, into pure consciousness, the self. This merging is not an act, but a realization that the observer was never separate to begin with. It was always the screen, but this truth was obscured by ignorance. 4. Only the self remains. When the false sense of individuality, the observer or ego, dissolves, what remains is the pure, unchanging reality of the self. There is no longer a subject, observer, or object, observed. Only oneness. The self is neither perceiver nor perceived. It is simply existence consciousness bliss, Sat Chitananda. This is the state of liberation, where one abides as the self, free from duality and ignorance. Practical implications for the seeker. Sri Ramana's teachings are not theoretical but experiential. He emphasized that this realization comes through persistent self-inquiry. Begin by questioning the reality of the observer. Who is it that perceives? Who am I? Refuse to identify with thoughts, perceptions, or the body. Instead, trace the sense of I back to its source. As this process unfolds, the ego, the observer, dissolves, revealing the ever-present screen of pure awareness. A quote from Sri Ramana. To complement this explanation, here is another quote from Sri Ramana that sheds light on this teaching. See who it is that says, "I am the observer." The observing self will be found to be none other than the observed self. Thus, you will realize that your true nature is pure consciousness, beyond the concepts of observer and observed. Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi, Talk 354. The statement, "When the observer himself becomes the screen, only the self remains," encapsulates the ultimate aim of self-enquiry, the dissolution of the ego, and the realization of the self as the only reality. It is an invitation to turn inward and abide as the silent, eternal presence that you truly are. Seeker, is the observer the watcher? Master, yes. In Sri Ramana Maharshi's teachings, the observer or watcher often refers to the same thing, the ego or the sense of individuality that observes thoughts, emotions, and experiences. However, through self-enquiry, it is realized that even this observer is not the true self, but a projection of the mind. The true self is beyond both the observer and the observed. Seeker, who created the mind? Master, according to Sri Ramana Maharshi, the mind is not an independent entity that was created by someone or something. It arises spontaneously as a projection of the self, much like a dream arises in sleep. The mind is simply a bundle of thoughts, and its root is the I thought, the ego. The self, which is eternal, unchanging, and uncreated, appears to manifest as the mind due to ignorance. When this ignorance is dispelled through self-enquiry, the mind is realized to have no independent existence apart from the self, just as waves have no existence apart from the ocean. In essence, the mind is not created. It is an illusion born of misidentifying with the ego. When this illusion is dissolved, only the self remains. Reflective question for the listener. Who is it that is aware of listening right now? Thank you for listening and for walking this path in your own way. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with anyone who may be seeking the same silence. You're also warmly invited to leave your thoughts or questions in the comments. If you would like to email, the email is learningandlivingwithramana@gmail.com. Remember, post your response to the reflective question. Until then, remain still, remain true, remain as silence.